The reason why I want to do this, I was inspired by Amai Wakasumuga ku Nkrumah when she stood up and asked the question, do you even respect this constitution? Do you respect this document? She stood up, the constitution in her hand, and she was raising that constitution to say, good, this document, do you even respect, this document? To me, ladies and gentlemen, that was the epitome of everything in terms of what citizen activism is all about. That is what we've been talking about. That is what we've been saying, that we need to be at the center of everything, us as the citizens of Zimbabwe, because we are the ones that matter. We are the ones that matter when it comes to this whole thing. You understand? We are the ones that matter when it comes to this whole thing, because we've got a duty, we've got a purpose, and the purpose that every citizen has when it comes to this thing that is called a constitution. You as a citizen, you have got that constitutional duty, Raminaro, Pamuri Papo, to resist anything that is unconstitutional. So anything that is unconstitutional, it is your duty as a citizen, and that duty is bestowed upon you by that document that that woman was holding in her hand. Under section 3 of that document, it states that you as citizens, you have a constitutional duty to resist unconstitutional governance. It's there in the constitution. So when I saw her, and she was multilingual, and she did put her points across, and I was like, wow, this is it. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. Pakazoya mo veteran wewe ni pakazopinda wewe. Ndaba ndanongoti he naro. And the whole veteran came in and said, "Good, he naro, he naro." The whole veteran came in. Wakataiwa he naro. Wakataura futi against the term extension of Emerson Mnangagwa. And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, was profound. Because you've got somebody who was in the war. Not vanama here, vanama mapurvea, anama here. Who was in the war? Who was in the thick of things, telling you, Kuti, this is not what we fought for. This right here must be resisted. Because we believed in collectivism. Chandawana tinojikatese. That is the motto. That is what these guys used to do. Not what we are seeing. So, those two voices, ladies and gentlemen, they did something to me. I heard them. I listened. I heard. I paid attention. And I was like, hey, Naro. This right here, ladies and gentlemen, forget about everything that you're being told. Because for what we know, that gathering in Mutare was a gathering of ZANU PF people only. It wasn't a gathering of the citizens of Zimbabwe. It wasn't a gathering of all the citizens of Zimbabwe. It was just a gathering of a ZANU PF. A decision to pursue a term extension made at a ZANU PF party conference. Not through a national dialogue, nothing whatsoever. Not through a public referendum, nothing whatsoever. And that right there, with the trajectory, with the way that this thing is going, you can see that there is a concerted effort to disenfranchise citizens of Zimbabwe and silence diverse political voices. We are beginning to be seeing that. We are seeing that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, has got far reaching consequences. But a change like what is about to be happening must be subjected to the will of the people. That has to be the starting point. Other than that, we don't have an agreement. That has to be the starting point. Anything else, it can't. Yataita ye tiri kumesi ye tiri ku primary school. Uchiti ukati -5 plus 1, what it can't. Dear Ankara, how you doing? I hope you're good. So this say, Aman Ntomba, na how you doing? I hope you're good. Maduve Murise say, I hope you're good. Any chicks, how you doing? Josie, how are you? Wani John, how you doing? I hope you're good. Right. So this starting point, ladies and gentlemen, is the Constitution. Because if you look at the constitutional framework, the Zimbabwean Constitution, the constitutional framework, this Zimbabwean Constitution, if you go to section 91, subsection 2 of that Zimbabwean Constitution, it limits the power, it limits the president to two 5-year terms. We all know that. I think most of us we are now familiar with section 91, subsection 2. What it says, it provides limits to the president to two 5-year terms. We are looking at the constitutional framework when it comes to this issue that we are talking about. So any amendment that is being proposed, right now to extend the tenure of Emerson Mnangagwa, ladies and gentlemen, it stands to violate that entrenched provision, the one that I just cited, because it safeguards our democratic rotation of leadership. That is the key point. Democratic rotation of leadership. Forget about everything that they are telling you to say. Here we are always in an election cycle. We are always in an election mode. You are not doing it right. If we are doing it right, there won't be any need for anyone to be in an election mode, because you are violating our democratic right when it comes to rotation of leadership. And ZANU PF has been violating that since the year 2000. This They have been violating that since the year 2000. If you go back in history, ladies and gentlemen, some people always say, why go back? Because history is a teacher. If you go back in history, you can tell that there were points in our history, in our entire history, where ZANU PF could have been a yesteryear political party, could have been gone. But they have continued to violate the democratic rotation of leadership in our nation that is called Zimbabwe. They violated that. They violated the provision that was set out in the 2013 Constitution, Section 91, subsection 2, that speaks of a two 5-year terms. They haven't violated that, but they're about to violate it. They're about to violate that. But when it comes to the democratic rotation of leadership, they've been violating that ever since the year 2000. They could have been gone. 2008 was a pivotal year for Zimbabwe. They could have been gone. 2018, they could have been gone. 2022, they could have been gone. But oh no, what did they do? They decided to cheat their way to the top. And another thing, what that constitution gives us, ladies and gentlemen, is the principle, which is the principle of constitutional supremacy, which is section 2, subsection 1, which speaks or which dictates that no law or political maneuver may override the constitution. I want you to hear me. No law or political maneuver may override the constitution. And what we witnessed last year in Blawayo, this year in Mutare, that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is a political maneuver that threatens to override our constitution. And that must be resisted. That right there must be resisted. Munofanira kuramba, munofanira kuresista. Because we don't want a situation whereby we continue with this violation of the entrenched provision to safeguard the democratic rotation of leadership in Zimbabwe. We don't want a continuation of that. We've been through that and we're tired. The Constitution of Zimbabwe, I'm quoting section 2, subsection 1, is the supreme law of Zimbabwe, ladies and gentlemen. And any law, custom, or conduct that is inconsistent with it is invalid to the extent of the inconsistency. The consistency that we have, ladies and gentlemen, is 5 years we have election. 5 years we choose a president. 5 years we choose MPs. 5 years we choose councillors. That is a consistent. Anything outside of that constitutes an inconsistency, and it must be resisted. I hope you're with me. Murufamba nini? Ngatifambe nacho. So that is the constitutional framework, ladies and gentlemen. That right there is the constitutional framework yatiri kudhila nayo sevana veZimbabwe. Muchishona ndiri kuti tine section yedu iri muConstitution of Zimbabwe inotara kuti president haafanirwe kunge aripo kwematemu maviri, haafanirwi kuraudzira matemu maviri. Aiwa, kana uchinge waita yekutanga wagona, tokupa yechituwo to show you our appreciation. Because yekutanga iyi tinenge tibokumezha zvakataurwa naDhagi kuti makambotimezha kupi. Apa isusu tiri kukumezha pane yekutanga iyi. Tozokupa yechipiri nokuti tafarira zvawaita iwewe semutungamiri kuti aiwa apa magona chimbotipaiwo dzimwe 5 years tione ugoni hwenyu. But after that hatichakudai. Learn to leave, the dance floor. Learn to leave the dance floor. Muchiri kugona kutamba. Because mukakwegura muri ipapo munozovasumudza here makumbo yayo. Hazvizoita. You understand? Zvikanzi kuchinja murawo uyu uripo kuti munhu anofanira kugara kwematemu maviri, zvikamu zviviri zvekutonga nyika. Ukangodzimira wadarikidza murawo iwoyo, zvese zvauchaita waakuisa udzvanyiriri kuvanhu kuti because vanhu vane kodzero yekuchinja utungamiri huripo. Because iwewe ukatanga first year tikazokusarudza futi tachinja utungamiri in a way yokuti uchazotiunzirwa zvimwe zvinyowani, but asati yedoda kuchinja, but we have put you on notice kuti this is now your last term. Asi ukadosera pafirst term yako tinokuchinja, tobva tapinza mumwe anoita kuti nyika iende mberi. Zvino imimi kana muchinge makuzviona imimi muri the alpha and the omega of everything, and you do decide to say maakutitorera right iyoyo, hamuchaonawo kuti izvoningi maakuresva. ndokudosera aka kwamunenge maakuita uko, maakutidosera, because mutemo webumbiro remutemo wedu isusu wenyika inotaura kuti hakuna mutemo uripo uri in existence right now unokanganisa that right yatiinayo isusu yekusarudza munhu wedu. And kana paine unhubu hurida kuitwa nepolitical party fanike huda kuitwa neZANU-PF uhu kuda kuvhiringidza mamiriro akaita constitution yedu, aiwaka zvinofanira kunge zvichirambidzwa, zvinofanira kunge zvichitipa simba rekuramba, nokuti constitution inotipa simba rekuramba. Our constitution gives us the power. Our constitution yedu isusu inotipa power, because it says that under section 3 we have got a duty. It is a constitutional duty for us to resist unconstitutional governance. And these guys, what they are proposing is going to amount to a constitutional governance, and therefore it must be resisted. Right. And mukada kutarisa tikada kuenda kumutemo chaiko chaiko yavanoti the rule of law and separation of powers. There's what they call the Dyson principle of the rule of law, which states that my leaders are subjected to the same legal limits as us, my citizens. Saka hapana anything chinokuita kuti uite special just because wasarudzwa kunzizo uite mutungamiri wenyika does not mean that iwewe you are now the god of the nation, or we are now a warlord. We do not have a warlord, system in Zimbabwe. Leaders are required, or leaders are subjected to the same legal limits as citizens. That is the Dyson principle of the rule of law. So if we follow that principle, any extending of the presidential term limits undermines the separation of powers. Because we are now having a situation whereby the executive is now trying to manipulate the constitutional limits so that it entrenches itself. Kuti varambe vari pachigaro. Yet we have got that document, it is clear. It stipulates. Kudai vakana mchinge magara abayai. Kana mchinge maira 2 terms bayai. Zvinhu zvokuti zvomuri kufurirana makagara kupick-up farm uko mouya muchida kuti under the guise of a lie yekuti handizvo is the citizens that wants him to stay. Who? I don't want him to stay. Do you? How many of you here want him to, to stay? Tikada kutora a quick poll here. How many of you want him, to stay? So who died and made them the decider of the citizens of Zimbabwe to say my Zimbabwean citizens are crying for a further a term extension for Emerson Mnangagwa? Zvakamboitika kupizvi. Ndokupi? Where is the evidence? Where is the evidence? Producing the evidence. Where is the evidence? There is no evidence whatsoever other than a meeting of confused ZANU-PF cadres who were sitting there in Blawayo, there in Mutare, 4,000 of them. And they want to say whatever it is that they did on those particular occasions. It represents. I don't know whether whatever numbers that they used or whatever numbers that they gathered at that particular moment in time is managed to generate a statistical power that can be used to generalize whatever it is that came out as a resolution number 1, to generalize it to the whole population, to say that this right here is representative of what the Zimbabwean people want. Who died and told you that? Who died and told them that? Where is the evidence that supports that? Amai vekunkulumani vakataura kuti I even respecting this document, Mdaramo veteran akataura kuti, I don't even care, let them hear me. But I am not for this. So just imagine. Yes, you might push back and say it's only two people. Come on now. When that woman stood up in that war, when she spoke, how many people indicated that they were with her? How many? I'm just talking about a one location. Just imagine if you have so many of those, and then we got one woman at the time in each and every place, a different woman, and that woman there goes there and says, "This is what we want. This is not what. This is what we don't want." And we measure by the ululation and the clapping of hands. Because we are having a situation, Yekuti, we have got a group of people that make decisions and want to impose those decisions on us. And then they want to masquerade and say that is the decision of the Zimbabwean people. No, it's not. No, 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 no. No, no, no. There is even, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm talking about is something that is not only, that is isolated to Zimbabwe, because there is comparative jurisprudence that can speak to this. In South Africa, in a case between Doctors for Life International versus the Speaker of the National Assembly of South Africa, the South African Constitutional Court, it made a point that any constitutional amendment must be reflective of public participation and legitimacy, not captured by the elites. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, speaks to the situation where the situation we are finding ourselves in. That we have got a group of people masquerading as the entire citizen of Zimbabwe, telling to us that we need to do this and this must be done, and yet it is not reflective of any attempt to have a public participation that would bestow legitimacy to that claim that they want to make. There's nothing like that. So therefore, the moment that we move from that, ladies and gentlemen, we are now going into the realm of democratic legitimacy. Because the term limits, the fathers, I'm calling them the fathers because they are the ones, that gave us, that document. What they told us was to say that the term limits, they designed these term limits in order to prevent a situation whereby we are going to be having personalization of power. They wanted to prevent that. And they wanted to ensure electoral accountability. That is why we have elections every 5 years, ladies and gentlemen. And whatever it is that is being proposed by that resolution number 1, ladies and gentlemen, it is only it is only leading us to one destination, which is the personalization of power. Because everything that you can think about, right now, and whatever it is that is being spoken about, right now, it is all about one man. It is all about one man. And that man is Emerson Mnangagwa. They want to personalize power so that it rests in one individual. Or they are already doing it in their ZANU-PF thing, personalizing power around one individual, one person, and they want to ensure that there's no electoral accountability. That must be resisted. If Emerson Mnangagwa, his term is going to be extended, ladies and gentlemen, this is not just an extension for him to finish his projects. What projects are you talking about? This is not the extension to mean continuation of development. What development are you talking about? This is not an extension to mean economic stability. What economic stability are you talking about? This is not an extension to mean there's going to be job creation and getting rid of the huge unemployment figure in the formal sector. What figures are you talking about? This right here, ladies and gentlemen, a risk is being introduced. I want you to hear me. The term extension of Emerson Mnangagwa is going to introduce a risk. A risk. And this is why it must be resisted. It's going to introduce a risk. And that risk, ladies and gentlemen, is the transformation of Zimbabwe into a de facto one-party state. That right there must be resisted. That risk of a de facto one-party state, it must be resisted because it erodes pluralism. It erodes that. We must resist that. Resist personalization of power. We must ensure electoral accountability by making sure that we, the people of Zimbabwe, stand by our constitution and with our constitution in as far as holding elections every 5 years is concerned. If a political party is having its own factional fights, that is their own problem. It has got nothing to do with the masses of Zimbabwe. If in your political party, Ziambi, if in your political party, because you were walloped in your primary elections and you are angry, your anger is towards the person, that walloped you, and you still want, to contest and wrestle power from that person, that has got nothing to do with us. You cannot then turn around and use that as a reason to say we want our MPs to have longevity. No, 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 no. No. You are no longer that wanted individual. You are now an untimely gentleman in the presence of people who do not want you anymore. Learn to leave the stage. Learn to say, I've done my bit. I got to go. But that doesn't exist in your psyches. And instead, you want to use your factional fights in ZANU-PF or the frictions that are occurring in the constituencies where you guys you voted into because somebody so and so walloped you at a primary election, and because you thought that you still command the support of the people and you still harbor that spirit of vengeance on this individual, and you want to use that as a guise to want to say once an MP is voted within a year, he is now facing opposition or is now facing somebody saying, I want your position. That is healthy for democracy. Come on now. How is that not healthy for a democratic society? What makes these MPs think that the position is for life? Mama plastic bags mama carrier bags ere emusensbury anonzi hanzizo ningi these are for life kati emutesco kati emusensbury emuasda hanzizo a bag for life kuti kana uchinge watongotenga bag iri zvatopera watotenga bag for life. Unodzoka mushopu muno uchiita shopping yako uchingodira imomo chete uchidzokera kumba uchidira imomo chete uchidzokera kumba. You must remove that mentality yekuti you think kuti izokavhoterwa as an MP that position is yours for life. No, it's never. Because our constitution says there are limits to everything. There are limits to everything, ladies and gentlemen. And we need to respect that. We need folks to respect that. So that risk, ladies and gentlemen, it must be fought. We must fight against the establishment of a de facto one-party state because it erodes pluralism. So who's going to be fighting? You and I. We are the citizens. We need to be fighting because our fight is not just coming out of Norway. Our fight is a fight that is bestowed upon us by the Constitution of Zimbabwe under Section 3. Because we have got that constitutional right, ladies and gentlemen, to resist anything that is unconstitutional. Because whatever it is that is about to happen with the 2030 agenda is going to go against what you and I have believed in. Because we've got a right under Section 3. The rights, that Section 3 is important because it enshrines democracy, it ensures good governance and accountability. And those, ladies and gentlemen, in a healthy democracy, those are the founding values. We need those because they are the founding values. Forget about everything that you've been told about, by these people. Whatever it is that they're proposing, it goes against what is written in the Constitution. This is why you were told by Tendai Biti. This is why you were told by Douglas Monzora. This is why you were told by Job Sigala that, whatever it is that, they want to do with that constitution is never going to be easy because it touches on so many parts of that constitution. Changing one means you have to change the other, and then you change that one. You have to change that one. You have to change that one. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a minefield. It's a minefield that they have to be navigating, through. It's never easy. This is why they want to play their game in parliament. So this is what they want to do now. Pay attention. They want to work with the captured MPs in parliament. They want to work with the captured councillors. Yesterday, I laughed when I saw, was it yesterday or the day before, yesterday, when I saw Mayor Jacob Mafume, reciting that, rubbish. And I was like, dude is going hook, line, and sinker. The moment that you have your opposition not seeing a demarcation line between itself and the ruling party, the moment that that line is blurred, ladies and gentlemen, if a matter of hakuna, akuchina. Vakatonyura. So just imagine that is the constituents that they are now after. Because they've realized that for them to just push the Mnangagwa, push the Mnangagwa extension, is going to be facing resistance. So now they are now finding a way to want to maneuver and do one over us. And Chabangu is their lapdog, is their puppet. So they want, draw the strings. Tamba stembo tamba muskwenda kabata. But when it matters most, we just draw the string and make you dance like a puppet. We tell you which move to make, which direction to face. And that is what they want to do. So just imagine, ladies and gentlemen, the hunger that our councillors have. Because in Zimbabwe, we have elected councillors, some of them councillors have got nothing. Councillors, some of them will be coming over kumusha just because I know Imba is very popular. Pama rally over naye naye. This is what that is what I hate about our, this system. Not. I'm advocating, for the removal of the system. No, 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 no. I'm saying the system of choosing representatives. We must change that. We must bring in people who are capable of doing what they've been elected for. Not these fly by night leaders that we second into council, that we second into parliament. We don't want that. Zimbabwe is a country with people who are capable, who have got competencies to be in these positions. Gone are the days of these fly by night, leaders that we just choose just because. No. Or this here, yekungosarudza munhu just because are in close proximity nina leader. We need to end that. That must come to an end. Because you see, this right here, what is about to happen, and the caliber of the leaders that we have in council, the calibers of the leaders that we have, in parliament. Somebody is in parliament because he's a concubine. He slept with so and so. He gave birth to so and so's child, Ari, a side chick. And that qualifies that person to be a member of parliament. Come on. We got to put an end to that, a stop to that. Because, ladies and gentlemen, what we are talking about here is the democratic legitimacy. How do we ensure that? We end personalization of power and ensure electoral accountability. Extending Emerson Mnangagwa's term risks transforming Zimbabwe into a de facto one-party state and eroding and ending pluralism. We need to stop that. You and I, as citizens, we have got a constitutional duty to resist unconstitutional governance, and it is provided for under Section 3, which enshrines the aspect of democracy, the aspect of good governance, and the aspect of accountability as the founding values that we must hold dear. If we can't, we're dead. If we can't, there is a dereliction of duty as citizens. So, sorry guys, I said I want to do this as a lecture. I apologize. Ndangopfeka kaheti kangu kechilecturer. Ndangoti aiwa rekandimbomhanya chirongwa ichi as a lecturer. That is what I'm talking about. I want to move on to the aspect which is quite important. And why we should be resisting everything that is going on. There's an aspect of socio-economic consequences attached to all this. Zimbabwe is a country that experienced hyperinflation. Everybody knows that. Zimbabwe is a country that is experiencing high unemployment. There are no jobs. There are no jobs. The formal sector is dead. The unemployment rate in Zimbabwe, which they are now masking with this informal thing, but our rate in Zimbabwe stands at over 90%. And in Zimbabwe is a nation that is ripe with corruption. Corruption. Corruption, 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 corruption. They even know it. They even acknowledge it. Sometimes they will tell you, we want to end corruption. A beneficiary of corruption. He knows corruption. He knows good corruption can make him, rich. A beneficiary of it. He knows how the game is played. And he comes and says, we want to end corruption. As uko corruption watamuna. But vanenge vakarairwa manje. Kana kuti mweya mutsvene unenge wapfeka panguva iyoyo. kana kuti inenge yanhingirikini munoziva ningi kuchivanhu kune spirit inonzi inorovera so hanzi spirit yarovera iyi munhu ongotaura zvaataura ipapo aroverwa apfekwa nespirit yamupfeka ipapo otaura chokwadi chake hazviri kuti anosvikirwa munhu hazviri kuti izvoigombwe hazviri kuti ane mudzimu asi ngoti pangoroverwa achibva angokuluma aibva akuudzai ndozvinoita ana Tagwire ivaiva vanongopfekwa so nespirit vanongoroverwa so panguva idzodzo dzaanenge ati mwari anenge ati izvo nemudzimu yenyika but sasika mira takugadzisa obva anzi kungoroverwa so hazvida kuti izvo nenge akusvikirwa angoroverwa so angotanga kukuudzai hey, we want to end corruption, hey, we want to create jobs. As one good and this the inflation is almost, I mean, a job, my jobless figures they are almost 12%. Anakura. As one good, we want to create jobs. We want to end inflation. What you could as one good, yes. One ngwaro zvino ipo pa ne mhepo ye social economic ningia consequences. Yes, I did pa. Yes, I rova. Utanga kukuudza icho kwadi. Saka Mnangagwa Stenya is coincided, ladies and gentlemen, with the hyperinflation, unemployment, and corruption. Saka just imagine the idea of extending his rule. Whenever they've been mismanaging, the economy for I don't know how many years. And now what they want to do is to entrench the economic mismanagement and deny you and me the chance and the possibility of enacting my reforms through leadership change. Muri kuudzwa nemamwe politicians vari kukuudzai kuti izvo tikapinda kutonga nyika inonaka. Ndo leadership change kaiwe. But havada kukudeprive iwo that. Jobs kana ari kukuudzai kuti izvo tikabvisa hurumende iyi tikabvisa hurumende iyi upenyu hweudzvanyiriri hwekutongwa nemutemo usimo muconstitution. It will be at the end. But havada kukuudzai izvozvo kuti aiwa imimi rambai ningi muchongotitonga imimi. Iko zvino izvi ndanga ndichiteerera mutauri akataura pane chimwe chivhidivhidi mutauri akataura nenge muparliament achitaura kuti akomana nyaya yemabank charges akomana tataimoni maada kuisa vari kukuudzai kuti izvo this right here is we want to put an end to this because they've been doing this for far too long. Mismanaging the economy, they've been doing it for far too long. And they've also denied you, as the citizens of Zimbabwe, that possibility of reforming through leadership change. We need leadership change. For them, we need new leaders. Do you think she's just saying that for the sake of saying that? That's because she needs to be associated by that phrase, whereby people, when they look at Fadzai, they will start to say we need new leaders. No, it is a realization that we have been under a sustained period of economic mismanagement, and it is threatening to be continuing with no solution at the end. And we want to be denied the right to change that? No, we must resist. You and I, we must resist. That is your core as a citizen. I said we are talking about citizen-focused arguments. These are the arguments that I'm putting across. We want to get our people to be conscientized, to know. We want, you see, what I am yearning to see right now, if I had the money, ladies and gentlemen, I would print the copies. I would print that constitution, ladies and gentlemen, in there now, even 16 million copies. If I had the money, I would fund 16 million copies of that constitution and distribute a copy to each and every citizen of Zimbabwe. And we start here narrow. And the section yakati vanhu vaMwari. ngaturove ichi handei pasection yakati vanhu vamwari verenga ichi, handei pasection yakati vanhu vamwari verenga ichi, handei pasection yakati vanhu vamwari verenga ichi. Maverenga ka manzwisisa chimira tichikuudzai zvaakuda kuitika munyika. Vakuda kukuudzai kuti zvemimi hamuchatenderwa kuvhotera munhu wamuri kuda after 5 year period by constitution inenge kutaura zvakadai. Munotenderana nazvo here? Aiwa, tinotenderana nazvo. You understand? A conscientized people, a well-educated people, a well-informed people can be in a position to be making decisions on the basis of the information that is provided to them. Manesi munoziva ndo inonzi informed decision making, person-centered care, putting the patient at the center of everything that you do, giving them a voice and making them be part and parcel of the decision making process. This is what we want. Let us take that from the nursing field and apply it to our people and say, "Good, we want our people to be informed." How are our people going to be informed? We want to give them all the necessary information that they deserve to know. Amaiva Bekunkulumani is a perfect example of a woman, who knows what to turn to or who knows where to go to if they want to make a point. She went to her constitution and said, hey, Mirai Makadoro, Mirai. There's this document that I have in my hand. Eerie document here. You seem not to be respecting this document. I don't know what got into you. Inguka here. Mutoriro here. Marowa nichamba here. Maakutadza kuziva kuti kune that document. Sorry ite zvarangu tubhoyi nokuti hachenyu hachikuvhiringidzei. But vamwe vanovhiringidzwa nacho. That right there, ladies and gentlemen. If it does not inspire you to be an active participant in what I am talking about, then there's no hope for you at all. There's no hope. There's never hope for you. So some of you guys, the name that I'm about, to mention, right now, you might not agree with him, but he said something that was quite, meaningful. And in my research, I came across it. But whatever it is, that he said, it was meaningful in 2022. Professor Wilson Ngube, he said, we Zimbabweans, our constitutionalism is in crisis. Do you know why he said that? He was arguing that whenever there is an economic collapse, ladies and gentlemen, remember we're talking about the socio-economic consequences. Whenever there is that collapse, economy, it is not separable from a constitutional erosion. The reason why everything, ladies and gentlemen, I saw an interesting piece that was penned by my brother. I don't know. When I think about it, I will. Okay. But I think he spoke in the lines Yakuti. Whenever we have a situation yatinayo mukati menyika yedu yeZimbabwe, iri kuitika ikuti our citizens have been reduced to paupers. There is now a new way of doing things, a new way of asserting one's power on the citizens, which is through the handouts, the donations, the car donations, the everything that is going on right there. What it is creating in our nation, which most of these guys that support that are blind to. They're not realizing that. They're creating an unchecked power that fosters a situation of patronage and corruption. That is the crisis that is happening in Zimbabwe right now. The economic collapse, ladies and gentlemen, if you look at the constitutional erosion that is taking place, the line has been blurred. There's no longer that demarcation line. And we are faced with a leadership that is so much coveted, so much power, such that that power is now gone unchecked. And in it gone unchecked, it has fostered an environment of patronage and corruption. And can I get an amen right there? Because that is what we are seeing at the present moment in Zimbabwe. That is exactly what is there. If you don't understand that, then don't go to Chitepo School of Ideology, but come to Ango Jedi School of Ideology, because I can school you on that. I can give you the knowledge on that. That is what we are experiencing right now in Zimbabwe. And all these things, ladies and gentlemen, if we do not challenge these things, mangwana ngatirege kutsvaga wokuchema naye. Right. I want to focus on the last two items before I open this thing. The last two items that I'm going to be focusing on, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be talking about what the international law and the regional norms say about what is about to be happening in Zimbabwe. Because we are living in a global society. We are not in isolation. Zimbabwe, ladies and gentlemen, is not on a certain planet, which is not planet Earth. Zimbabwe is here. We live among a family of nations. And therefore, living among a family of nations, there are laws that binds us. And there are norms that we should be following in the regional integration that we've made. We've got the AU, we've got the SADC, the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance of 2007. This is what it does. It prohibits the manipulation of constitutional term limits to extend incumbency, to extend the rule of the one who is there. It is forbidden. It's like you are eating the apple in the Garden of Eden. God forbade Adam to eat that apple. God forbade Eve to eat that apple. And when they ate that apple, there were consequences. Those of you, who want to take it, biblical. The African Charter on Democracy, Elections, and Good Governance. It prohibits manipulation of the constitutional term limits to extend leadership. Because Mnangagwa is stepping out. He must step out. My principles and guidelines for governing democratic elections of 2015. Anezuro uno no. Nezuro uno no 2015. They gave an emphasis of regular leadership change is essential to democratic legitimacy. So these things, that we're talking about, they are not things, that are not safeguarded, by anything. We have got the AU, we have got the region in SADC. When they say regular leadership change, they are talking about elections, ladies and gentlemen. My elections are important. Chinja leadership. Aiwaka maita imimi zvakwana. Term limits aripo. Kana iwe wada uchinja term limit iwewe, haufana benefit from that change term limit. Zvirimo. Not only is that in that chart, it is also in our constitution. You're not supposed to be benefiting, but oh no. Oh no. We've got somebody who thinks, they are above everything else. They can do whatever it is that they want. They can create a state of their own. They can have their Mutapa empire, the Mutapa empire. I wish, the Mutapa spirit would just come back and strike. What Iowa is good at in Anashumba Murambu is get away. That honor can never be bestowed on you. But we are having that. And do you know Gudi Manakizira Acha Zuneita Zunizo Ziz? We even have got case law in Zimbabwe. That entrenches, what I'm talking about. I'll come to it. But when you're looking at the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance, the 2007 one, which prohibits manipulation of constitutional term limits to extend the tenure of a sitting president, and the SADC Principles and Guidelines Governing Democratic Elections 2015, which placed emphasis on holding of regular elections so that change becomes essential to bestow legitimacy to that who has been chosen under a democratic system. The moment that we flout this, ladies and gentlemen, I'm speaking to you as citizens. The moment that these are flouted, another risk come in. Another risk come in. And we've been on this for over 20 years. And we don't want to go back there. The risk of regional isolation and sanctions is real. If these norms are undermined, that right there is real. And it is upon us, the citizens of Zimbabwe, to push back, to say no. We will never have a situation whereby one's tenure in office is extended and they benefit from that. And we can never a situation whereby they tell us holding elections is a waste of time because it keeps us in a cycle of election mode. That is rubbish, that is bullshit, and must never be tolerated, because that right there, it undermines our ability to participate in the change of leadership when it comes to Zimbabwe. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, us as citizens, I want us to know this. I want you and me to know this, that we are not just passive subjects. You and I, we are not passive subjects. We are not. We should not be just sitting on our laurels and hope that a Messiah is going to come and do things for us. No, because we are not passive subjects. But we are constitutional stakeholders, because the Constitution gives us the authority to challenge that which is unconstitutional. So therefore, we have become a constitutional stakeholder. You and I. Tokonakana kutodedzana panapa kuti ko ndepiko constitutional stakeholder uri boy here. Ototi ko stakeholder ndepe yako. Zviri sei ko nhasi ndinge stakeholder. Tikutaura ko zvipi ko nhasi ndinge stakeholder. Constitutional stakeholder wainzwa here nyaya yandingataurika iyi. Because that is what it is. We are not just passive. And by being constitutional stakeholders, we have got a duty to protect against constitutional unconstitutional governance. It means we've got ways of doing that. I want you to hear me. We've got ways of doing that. We can resist. And that resistance, ladies and gentlemen, it can take so many lawful forms. Hear me. Lawful forms. We need to participate in civic mobilization. That right there is important. Let us participate in civic mobilization. That civic mobilization, ladies and gentlemen, is when we are going to be conscientizing each other. I said before, if I had money, I would purchase 16 million copies of that constitution. I would purchase 16 million copies of that constitution, deliver it kumachikoro, kumachechi, kumagochigochi, kumachii. Every forum where people gather to socialize, I would go there and I would hand them a copy and say, "This is your Bible. Second your Bible. If you're a church goer, second your King James version. But I want you, this right here is yours because you're a stakeholder. You can't be a shareholder without a share certificate. Hear me right there. You can't be a shareholder, a stakeholder without that share certificate. Right here, ladies and gentlemen, is your share certificate. This constitution here, this copy right here, this copy here, this right here is your certificate. Read that. Do you want pointers? Okay, go to section 91, subsection 2. Read that. Memorize that. Go to section 328, subsection 7. Read that. Memorize that. Go to section 2. Read that. Memorize that. Go to section 3. Read that. Memorize that. Become informed. Become educated. Education is not all about going to a classroom and cram, stuff, right there, and then you come out there and say, "I am educated." No, it takes place in every area, facet of our life. Let's educate each other. That's civic mobilization, ladies and gentlemen. Because when we get educated, when we come calling and say, "Ladies and gentlemen, we want to go," if they give us the referendum and say, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming now. We want to tell you about this referendum and why we are saying no." Remember that copy, that constitution, that certificate that we gave you, that you hold dear. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, go to that section, go to the section, go to the section. And this is why we are saying, excuse me, this is why we are saying no to this, no to that, no to this, no to that. You become armed. You'll have your armor. You can defend the vote. You can defend yourself. You can defend the constitution. You can repel the enemy arrows. And that enemy arrow is the change of that constitution. It's an enemy. That right there is an enemy. Is an arrow of an enemy. It needs to be repelled, deflect it, and send it back to them. Return to sender. So we can do litigation. If we want to go down that route, we can go to the courts. You see, where I find this to be something that boggles the mind. Justice Malala in 2016, he observed in a case involving the Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights and the Minister of Justice that as Zimbabweans, as citizens, we are guardians of the Constitution when institutions have failed. As a Zimbabwean, this was in 2016, in a case involving the Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights versus Minister of Justice. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, says when institutions have failed, us as citizens, we are guardians of constitutionalism. Which institution has failed, ladies and gentlemen? Our parliament has failed. Our judicial system has failed. So what do we need to do? We need to rise up and be counted. Because we are the defenders. We are the Voltron, the defenders of constitutionalism. Those of you who grew up in the 80s, Maizia Katunya and the Voltron, the defender of the universe. I am saying we are the defenders of constitutionalism. We are the guardians. We we guard that thing generously, and we must demonstrate that by participating in civic mobilization. If any chance arises, pane litigation iri kuitika, ladies and gentlemen, iri kuda kuitika, ladies and gentlemen, muchatapirirwa zvenyu. Kana chinge takuzoitaura nezvayo. And that right there is citizen participation. It's coming. And I will let you know. Kana zvinge zvasvika pazviri kufanira kunge zvichisvika ndokuudza kuti ichi musi uya musi wa17 December 2025 ndo zvandaitaura izvi. Litigation is important. And then of course there's international advocacy. Never lose sight of that. We are not in isolation. Zimbabwe is not a pariah state. Zimbabwe is not a jungle. We live among nations. We are a part of a family of nations. There's always something that can be done internationally. Put pressure on these people. Put pressure on them. Already we know what the African Charter says. Already we know what the SADC principles say. We know all those things. We can utilize that. We can arm ourselves. We can do everything that we can do in order to stand guard and defend constitutionalism. Because institutions have fallen. Institutions have fallen. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the ranting that I had for you today. I'm about to take, a step back. Ndo timuye henyu timbokurukura nyaya yatataura iyi. Kana paine vane mubvunzo tibvunzana tipindurana. But I'm not saying kuti I have all the knowledge. I just thought of this and I was like, okay, on the backdrop of seeing those, the woman in Nkulumane and that war veteran standing up and saying, no, we will not accept this. A thought just struck me and say, why can't we have a conversation about this and let everybody know, Kuti, don't be fooled and don't be lied to. Muchinzi handizo nyika yese iri behind 2030. It's a lie, a goddamn white lie or black lie, because that is not in the position. So when it comes to our constitution, ladies and gentlemen, the term limits are entrenched. We as citizens, we must resist any unlawful amendment. That is what we need to do. When it comes to the rule of law, let us know that our leaders are bound by law, and therefore we demand accountability. That is your duty. Know that leaders are bound by law, and your duty is to demand accountability. When it comes to the notion of democracy, we must make sure that we work towards preventing authority, the people that want to maintain their position, forever. And we must uphold the pluralism as a people, as a nation, as citizens. When it comes to the economy, you know that whenever there is a collapse of the economy, it is followed by misrule, and that is what we're experiencing right now in Zimbabwe. They are, they are telling you whatever it is. Come on, how can we have a nation this Christmas? Everyone is just looking towards a donation. Everyone is looking towards a donation. Come on now, how can we have such a situation? So the collapse of an economy, ladies and gentlemen, is linked to misrule. Whatever it is, that is going on, that power is no longer the power that is that is being given by the constitution. No, it is a power that is being given by money. Don't let them fool you. But Zimbabwe is creating billionaires. Where are the companies? Don't let them fool you. They mustn't even be fooling you. Don't let them fool you by them telling you that the economy is growing, like what that George Guamatanga was spewing a few days ago. There's nothing like that. That country is experiencing something that has never been experienced and explained in any economy that exists in this world. Zimbabwe, ever since the days of Gono, Zimbabwe has created its own economic, I don't know. And it's never, you can't even write a thesis on it. You can't even write a thesis on it. because there's a failure. So we must advocate for reform. Reform, 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 reform. But but remember, there are international norms that we can rely on. We have got the regional charters that prohibit these extensions in Snagana and Nemsoros Dawitwes. And our duty, in addition to be doing everything that I've spoken about, we must also be mobilizing regional solidarity. Let us mobilize that. Regional solidarity is important. You might say, "Oh, they are a gentleman's club." Oh, but if that fails, ladies and gentlemen, we can go beyond the regional solidarity. So before I bring you guys, to speak in a minute, I'll conclude by saying this to you and me as citizens of our nation called Zimbabwe, the only nation that we have. Mukadiminyika pasi rose inonzi Zimbabwe. That teapot-shaped country that you find in the southern region inonzi Zimbabwe. Vanhu vaMwari, as citizens, take this message, pass it on to your loved ones, to your haters, to whoever cares to listen to you. Tell them that Mnangagwa's proposed term extension, not only is it unconstitutional, not only is it undemocratic, but it is economically destructive. And a hammer on that. Economically destructive. A hammer on that. Urge your folks, urge the people in your orbit. Tell them that you and I, we have got a constitutional duty of resisting. And we need to make sure that this constitution that was born about 12 years ago is still in its infancy. And we need to be preserving that Zimbabwean constitutional and make it that Zimbabwean constitutional order. Let's preserve it. Let's make sure that we protect the legitimacy of our democratic institutions in Zimbabwe. We need to protect democracy in Zimbabwe. And we need to secure what I call economic or socio-economic justice for those who are to come, for the future generation. Because this fight is not for you only. This fight is not for me only, but this fight is for the present. This fight is for the future. We owe it to them. One day they will look back and say, our forefathers, they were stupid. We don't want that situation. So this right here is a future for today future, for tomorrow future, and forever future. And make it a principle. Make it something that you believe in. To say, I am a citizen of Zimbabwe and I must resist. Whatever it is that is about to be happening in Zimbabwe, I must resist because it is unconstitutional, it is undemocratic, and it is economically destructive. And as a result, I need to preserve the Zimbabwe constitutional order. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you for listening to me.